Welcome back. So we understand a little bit more about Bitcoin, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, our economy. Canadians are being crushed by inflation, debt, and runaway government spending. And when people push back, they risk financial punishment. This isn't freedom, it's financial surveillance. So, Brad, during the trucker protest, we saw Canadians have their bank accounts frozen for supporting a cause that the government didn't like. What did that moment reveal about the risks of centralized finance?
Well, for a lot of us Bitcoiners that have been paying attention to history and are students of history, this is just another example in a long line of confiscations and bail-ins and devaluations and capital controls that countries turn to during times of crisis. I mean, if you look back at the long arc of history, this is not new. There's something like 95% of all fiat currencies that have ever existed through history are gone because they either get hyperinflated away or they just, as recently as a couple of years ago in Lebanon, recently in Nigeria, 10 years ago in Greece and Cyprus. I mean, even in modern history, like 5, 6 years ago in India, they got rid of the 1,000 rupee bill, and a lot of immigrants that came to Canada with their cash actually found that now all of a sudden they can't send that back home. They can't use that cash because that bill is no longer valid. So there's all kinds of examples of governments through the world printing too much money, going into debt too much, and then being unable to sustain that and turning to capital controls, surveillance, wealth confiscation, and bail-ins and things like that to try to shore up their balance sheet and control what people do with their money. In China, it's really difficult for people to get out of the yuan, and they can't even own, I think it's more than $50 worth of American dollars. So,
Wow.
like that was just one thing coming to us in North America that the rest of the world has seen a lot of over the last 10, 20 years.
Right. So this is actually solving a much bigger problem. I can appreciate that this is how we saw it as Canadians, but it's something that's been sort of rattling around through history for a very long time. So something like Bitcoin solves that problem more so at scale, which is great. So in addition to government overreach, things like high taxes, inflation, and money printing, they devalue our currency. How do these trends make the case stronger for Bitcoin?
Well, a Bitcoin is capped at 21 million, and just like it was modeled after gold, as gold has an inflation of about 1% to 2% a year, depending on the price of gold and how willing people are to go deep into the earth to find the gold. But as the price of gold gets higher, people go and find more gold at harder to find places because the effort is worth it now.
Right.
With Bitcoin, there's a 21 million cap ever, and it's modeled mathematically because we're in a digital world. We're going into a world of digital intelligence. We're going to have a digital money for digital intelligence and for analog intelligence. We should be able to have a money that we can see the supply of and know that it's not being inflated by some people pulling levers in a room somewhere that weren't elected. So with Bitcoin, it's open source. The smartest people, the largest companies in the world have validated this thing actually is scarce, like it said, and everybody can open up the code and see it. And if you can't read the code, you can throw it in ChatGPT and say, explain this to me
Yeah.
like I'm five.
That's awesome. So the limited supply is really what creates the value here and the scarcity and the significant difference between really any other fiat currency. I can appreciate that. So,
It's,
um,
yeah, it's similar to gold or even property.
right, yeah, and I'm seeing now the government is kind of shifting into this digital space. So, what's the key difference between Bitcoin and a central bank digital currency or a CBDC like the Canadian digital dollar? And why should Canadians be very concerned about the rise of these CBDCs?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of freedom-minded individuals are very skeptical of CBDCs, and they definitely should be because CBDCs are something that we see in like China combined with social credit scores to be able
Right.
to make it that you can't spend your money on certain things if you don't act the way that the government wants you to act. Now, that makes people skeptical in general of digital currencies. So they kind of conflate the idea of Bitcoin with a digital currency and they say, "No, I want my cash. Cash is king."
Right.
But I really want to implore people that are kind of on that freedom path to take a deeper look at monetary history and understand that that cash, even if it's physical, is still being debased. The dollar has lost like 98% of its value over the last 100 years and something like 20% of its value even over the last 10 years. So you can see that your dollars, if you're saving physical cash, it's not gonna hold its value, and that trend is gonna continue because it's the system we live in. So you shouldn't conflate Bitcoin with a digital currency like a CBDC because Bitcoin is actually the antidote. It's the freedom technology version of digital currency that governments and central banks are trying to push on people. So you just got to do more research and try to follow like Bitcoin educators to kind of dive deeper into that.
Yeah. So what basically what I'm getting with the digital currencies, it's sort of an extension of a fiat currency. Unfortunately, it just comes with a little more government control. Okay, we'll be right back, guys. We'll see you soon.